My name is Lindsay Anderson.
And I'm Dana VanVeller.
And our book is called Feast, Recipes and Stories from a Canadian Road Trip.
We spent 150 days traveling across the country in a tiny car together. We traveled to all 10 provinces and all 3 territories in search of vibrant and interesting stories of Canadian food culture.
Yeah, and now we have a collection of 114 recipes in the book, contributed by people from all across the country that we met as we were traveling, and a number contributed by ourselves as well because we also love to cook. So obviously one of the staple ingredients in Canada is maple syrup. We all love it. We pour it on our pancakes and our waffles, but we weren't quite as familiar with another syrup in Canada, which is birch syrup. We discovered this sort of in abundance when we were in the Yukon. There's a producer up there who makes bottles and bottles of it. It's incredibly delicious, but very, very different. It's not quite as sweet as maple, but it's amazing with fish, with meat, so for cooking savory dishes. But we also have used it in sweet recipes as well.
One of our favorite surprises was tomato wine. We were in Charlevoix and ended up visiting a tomato farmer who grows acres and acres of heirloom tomatoes, which he then presses and ferments into a beautiful white wine. It's not red and it doesn't smell or taste like tomatoes like you might think. It's actually a really lovely white wine.
Sort of like a Sauvignon Blanc. We expected a Caesar would get poured, but that's not what we got. We got a really nice white wine. One thing that we loved when we were traveling across the country is that we discovered there are plenty of baked goods across the north that we are now obsessed with. So it turns out the Yukon loves cinnamon buns. So as we were traveling through the Yukon, we stopped basically at every bakery we could and tried a different cinnamon bun. There's a stop between Whitehorse and Dawson City that's really famous for its plate-sized buns. So we could barely, did we finish that bun?
Mostly.
We tried. We did very well. We almost finished a plate-sized cinnamon bun.
It was lunch.
It was lunch in the Yukon. And then we also found that in Churchill, Manitoba, which is the polar bear capital of the world, you can go out and explore the tundra for an afternoon and see the polar bears, and then you go back to Gypsy's Cafe, which is really famous for their apple fritters. So we tried not only an apple fritter, but also a pineapple fritter.
We kept discovering new foods. We started in BC. We thought that maybe that would happen further down the road when we were out of our home province, but it in fact happened almost just 2 days into the trip. We discovered salmon berries on the west coast of Vancouver Island, and we'd never ever heard of them. They're kind of like a raspberry mixed with a blackberry, and wouldn't have looked twice. Would have just assumed, oh, those are poisonous. We can't eat those. Never seen them.
Turns out they're delicious.
And then as we kept traveling, we discovered all kinds of other berries, like hascat berries, which are kind of like a Merlot-flavored blueberry. They look like an oblong blueberry.
We discovered that the prairies are super famous, or actually not super famous, they should be, for sour cherries. We visited a couple orchards there, and who would have thought that there would be tree after tree covered in these beautiful sour cherries, and people there are making sour cherry jam and all kinds of baked goods, and so we took as many as we could and actually put some into the book. So one of our favorite East Coast discoveries was Al Pickett's garlic farm on PEI. Al grows garlic organically, and then he turns it into black garlic, which is something that's a lot more popular in kitchens now. It's very, very, very black. It looks like coal, and it tastes kind of like balsamic vinegar. And Al, in his tiny little warehouse, has a whole system set up. It's all secret how he makes it, what the temperature is. And so we got to try Al's black garlic and really, really fell in love with it. So again, we have started cooking with that a lot, and that made one of our best meals when we were in PEI. We were camping and we grilled up with some local sourdough, black garlic, some Avonlea cloth-bound cheddar, and that was honestly one of our most memorable meals that we had.
When we left, it wasn't our goal to find 1 or 2 Canadian dishes. We knew that would be probably a futile mission, that, you know, we're separated by so much land and there's, you know, thousands of kilometers in between us, that there would likely be variations in what we eat. But what we were surprised by was just how much diversity there actually was.
Kind of no matter where we went, whether we crossed a border or not, people were always really enthusiastic to talk to us. We found that there's influences in all regions of the country, from people whether they've come from afar or whether those are First Nations traditions, people who've been here for years or people who have been here for decades. There's so much to discover in Canada. We really encourage people to get out and travel, whether it's across the country for 5 months with your buddy, or if you are just in your own backyard, because honestly, you never know what you'll find.